The Vermisplicer is the second kitgun chamber available to purchase from Father in the Necralisk. It is a beam weapon that fires tentacles which latch onto enemies. The primary version of this weapon fires one tentacle that can chain to 5 targets. The tentacle latches onto the midpoint of the enemy and stays connected until it's out of range. The tentacle has innate toxin damage and high slash damage. The grip you use will determine the weapon's base damage and range. As far as I can tell, it only affects the initial beam range, but not the distance between chained enemies. This distance seems to be between 2 and 3 meters. The fire rate for the primary will be 8 no matter which grip you use. The Vermisplicer has higher critical and status chance than other kitgun chambers and equal to the gaze chamber. When picking the loader, remember that a big magazine will be useful since this is an automatic weapon. Decent status chance will also be good, since we will want to inflict viral and slash procs. From Tier 3 loaders I'd recommend the Stitch, because of the higher magazine size. From the Tier 4 loaders, Killstream and Splat will both be good because of the high critical chance. Acroyd from the Infested loaders will also be a good choice. The magazine is a bit smaller, but the critical and status chance are both high. The first primary configuration I'm going to show you uses the Brash grip for the longer range and the Stitch loader for the bigger magazine size. The best build for this weapon will be using the slash and viral procs. It is a bit forma heavy, as it requires 5 of them. You will need 5 V polarities and 1 D polarity. You could save yourself 2 formas if you use rhyme rounds instead of primed cryo rounds. You only need 1 mod with cold damage to get viral damage since it will combine with the innate toxin damage. Hunter munitions will inflict slash on critical hits. Heavy caliber is here for more base damage, since the lower accuracy won't matter too much. There are a few options you could put in this last slot. Speed trigger for more fire rate. Vigilante armaments for more multi-shot. Sinister reach for more range. Bladed rounds will increase your critical damage after a kill. You could put a Riven here if you have one. You might need 1 more forma to fit it in. I'll show you the build using Argon Scope. Since the tentacle attaches to the torso of the enemy, you can only get headshots if you aim at the head before the tentacle has latched on. If you want to use this build, I recommend using bladed rounds instead of heavy caliber, since it will make aiming easier. My second primary configuration uses the Tremor grip, with higher base damage and lower range, and the Killstream loader for the high critical chance. The same build as before works even better. The lower magazine isn't too much of a trouble, since the enemies die from bleed damage while the battery reloads. The secondary version of the Vermisplicer fires 5 tentacles that can latch onto different targets. The in-game description says 3 tentacles, but there are definitely 5 of them. The innate multi-shot value is also 5. The grips will determine base damage and range. Since there is no mod that will increase the range on beam pistols, you might want to go for higher range. In my opinion, there is a reason to go for lower range, aside from the higher damage. Lower range will mean the tentacles will have a higher chance to latch onto the same target, instead of splitting off. So if you want to use this weapon at lower levels, go for more range so you can take down multiple targets at once. If you want to use this weapon against tougher enemies, go for lower range and higher damage. You will notice while looking at these values that the status chance is 5 times lower for the secondary version, compared with the primary. It's because of the multi-shot. The status chance applies to each tentacle separately. Again, I would recommend the Stitch loader from the Tier 3 loaders, and Killstream or Splat from the Tier 4 loaders. From the Infested loaders, the Acroyd, with the higher critical and status chance, or the Macro Acroyd, with the biggest magazine, are both good choices. My first configuration uses the Ulnaris grip, with the medium range and damage, and the Macro Acroyd loader, with the huge magazine. The longer reload speed isn't too terrible, since I rarely manage to empty the whole magazine. For this build, you will need 4 V polarities and an optional D polarity if you want to use Deep Freeze instead of Frostbite. Viral and Slash will still be the best combo for this weapon, even if we don't have Hunter munitions for secondary weapons. You can choose from several options for this last slot. Augur Pact for more damage. Anemic Agility or Gunslinger for more fire rate. Hollow point for more critical damage. I think the best option is Karna's Stinger. The increase in status chance isn't huge, but combined with the multi-shot, it makes a big difference. You could use hydraulic crosshairs on this one too. You can't really aim the tentacles, but some of them will hit the enemy's head from time to time. My second configuration uses Haymaker, for the higher base damage, and Killstream, for more critical chance. The magazine size is much lower, but it isn't too much of an issue with the fast reload, especially when using Pax Charge. With Primed Pistol Gambit, it has almost 112% critical chance, which means that yellow crits are guaranteed. Both Hollow Point and Karna's Stinger will work well with this build, but Karna's Stinger might be a bit better. The effectiveness of this build depends on inflicting status and viral procs, so having more status chance is better. The Vermisplicer primary is very similar to the Kuva Nukor, except it's a primary weapon. It might be the strongest primary kitgun and it is definitely my favorite beam weapon. The secondary version isn't too bad either, but the tentacles seem to have a mind of their own. They can take down even high-level targets, if they work together and focus on one target.